If you think procrastination is normal and that productivity is a matter of talent, I have news for you. You are wrong, wizard. What I'm going to show you today will turn your concept of productivity upside down. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to finish the day with everything done and still have free time? The truth is that most people fail because they continue to use the same strategies that are doomed to fail. But those who discover and apply these 4 tricks simply don't procrastinate anymore. And the best part, you can start seeing results as early as tomorrow. It sounds too good to be true, right? But believe it. The difference between success and stagnation is not in doing more, but in knowing how to do it. Get ready, because what you will learn here is not what most people are willing to share. And this is precisely what you needed to make a giant leap in your productivity. To explain these 4 tricks to avoid procrastination, let's use the story of Michael and David as an example. Stay tuned, because I'm sure you will recognize yourself in many of the situations we will illustrate from now on. Michael and David started their careers at the same company, both full of expectations and dreams of growing professionally. However, as time went on, their paths diverged. David, always dedicated and organized, was promoted twice, which directly reflected in salary increases. Meanwhile, Michael found himself stagnant, with the same role and no prospects for advancement. This contrast between the 2 colleagues led Michael to question his own practices and to seek ways to improve his productivity at work. After all, how did David manage to advance while he remained in the same place? Part of the answer lay in the habit of procrastination that Michael had developed. He found himself postponing important tasks, delaying commitments, and getting lost in a sea of incomplete chores. Procrastination not only affected his productivity but also his motivation. Seeing David receiving his raises and climbing the hierarchy, Michael felt increasingly demotivated. He began to realize that maybe the problem was not a lack of capacity but the way he organized or failed to organize his daily tasks. With this in mind, Michael decided to seek professional help. When consulting a productivity expert, he was introduced to some simple techniques that could transform his routine. That's when he began to understand that the difference between him and David was not just effort, but how each managed their time and organized their priorities. The blockage he felt was actually a combination of lack of organization and the absence of a clear action plan for his tasks. David, on the other hand, always started his days with a well-structured plan. He kept his workspace impeccable, which helped keep his mind focused. Each task was organized in such a way that he could maintain motivation throughout the day. While Michael started the day with an endless list of 30 tasks and finished not knowing where to begin, David divided his tasks so that, by the end of the day, he felt he had made significant progress. The difference between them wasn't just a matter of discipline, but also how they managed the mental block that arose when facing significant responsibilities. Michael began to realize that he needed a new approach, something to help him break out of inertia. Thus, he started to test new strategies, inspired by David's success. However, this change didn't happen overnight. It was through this search that he began to learn the power of applying small habits daily. As Michael delved deeper into this journey of self-discovery and improvement, he finally understood that the path to success at work required more than sheer effort. It was about planning, organizing, and above all, staying motivated. The first step out of stagnation was right before his eyes. Start with the basics, something so simple, yet often overlooked. Michael realized that one of the biggest barriers to accomplishing his tasks was the initial block. He woke up with a massive list of responsibilities and simply didn't know where to start. The trick he learned was, start with the simplest thing. It may seem obvious, but often we try to force ourselves to start with something complicated, and by doing so, we end up delaying the start of any task. Michael decided to test this technique. On his next workday, instead of diving straight into big and challenging tasks, Michael chose to start with something very simple, answering a few emails and organizing his desk. These small actions not only made him feel like he was making progress, but also helped provide the initial momentum needed to tackle the rest of the day. The feeling of finishing a task, however small, generates positive energy that fuels the desire to continue. And that's exactly what happened with Michael. By starting with these smaller tasks, Michael noticed that the mental block he usually felt in the morning began to disappear. Procrastination, which once seemed like an insurmountable mountain, was now just an obstacle he could easily navigate. He learned that often the great secret of productivity is not doing everything at once but taking the first steps, no matter how small. With each completed task, his motivation grew, and he felt more confident to face the rest of the day's obligations. A practical example of this is when you wake up with several pending tasks. Instead of focusing on all of them at once, choose the simplest one. Perhaps organize the paperwork in your office or take a quick look at the budget for the month. This may seem minor, but it sets you in motion. And when we are in motion, procrastination loses strength. Michael, who at the start of the day had more than 30 tasks to complete, was now reducing this list and already beginning to see the direct impact of this new approach. What Michael realized, and what you can also apply, is that by simplifying the start of your journey, you create a domino effect. Small tasks, once completed, lead to greater achievements. The lesson he learned was clear. The key to productivity is to start with what you can do right now without overwhelming yourself right away. After learning to start with the simplest tasks, Michael realized he needed a strategy to handle the accumulation of tasks throughout the day. That's when he discovered the power of a well-structured to-do list. It might sound cliché, but breaking down large responsibilities into smaller parts made all the difference for him. The productivity expert he consulted recommended something simple: divide each large task into 3 to 5 smaller parts. This not only made the work more manageable but also provided a constant sense of progress. In practice, when facing a large task like preparing a financial report, Michael began to break this work into smaller steps. First, he would gather the necessary data, then analyze the information, and finally, draft the report. Before, just thinking about the entire report overwhelmed him and led to procrastination. But with this new approach, each part of the task seemed less daunting. With each small completion, he felt more motivated to keep moving forward. Another tip that helped was starting the day with this list already prepared. Michael would create his task list the night before, breaking down each major responsibility into smaller parts. This meant that upon waking up, he didn't need to spend time deciding what to do but already had a clear plan in hand. This advanced planning made him start his days with more focus and direction, eliminating the feeling of being lost among many demands. And believe me, this made a huge difference in his productivity. With every task he crossed off the list, Michael felt the pressure decrease. On a typical day, he might have about 30 tasks to complete. Previously, he would end the day unsure of how to manage all this and often postponed most tasks. But by adopting this system, he significantly reduced the number of pending tasks. On one specific day, he finished with only 12 tasks remaining, which was a great victory for him. This is because dividing the tasks created a sense of continuous progress. This method of breaking down large tasks is something anyone can easily apply. Whether you're an investor reviewing your investment portfolio or a business owner dealing with daily demands, creating a task list and dividing it into smaller parts is the essential trick to keeping motivation high and mental blockages at bay. No matter how big the challenge, when you break it into smaller parts, it becomes much easier to tackle. Now moving on to the next lesson. As Michael realized he was gaining control over his tasks with the help of the lists, he began to observe another factor that directly influenced his productivity: his workspace. During his journey of self-discovery, he understood that the disorder around him directly reflected the disorder in his mind. A cluttered workspace, with papers scattered, cables tangled, and objects out of place, made him feel even more overwhelmed. The productivity expert suggested something simple: keep his work environment clean and organized. Michael decided to start with the basics. He began to take a few minutes at the beginning of each day to organize his desk. Unnecessary papers were thrown away, materials were sorted into drawers and folders, and he even invested in a good cable organizer. This small change had a huge impact. He began to notice that with a cleaner surrounding environment, his mind also became clearer. The feeling of being suffocated by chaos dramatically decreased, and he felt lighter and more ready to begin his tasks. An organized workspace also increased his efficiency. Before, he wasted time looking for documents or items that were randomly scattered. Now, with everything in its right place, he could quickly find what he needed, which helped him maintain focus. Additionally, a clean environment creates a more pleasant and inviting atmosphere for work, which contributes to increased motivation. It's no wonder many experts recommend that an organized space is essential for improving productivity. Another important detail Michael noticed is that physical organization directly impacted his mental organization. He realized that when his desk was clean, he also had more clarity to prioritize his tasks. His mind was no longer overwhelmed by unnecessary visual stimuli and, as a result, he could focus on one task at a time instead of being distracted by the disorder around him. A simple act of organizing his workspace significantly reduced procrastination. You can easily apply this trick. Whether you work in a large office or at home, your workspace needs to be a place that stimulates concentration. Take 5 minutes of your day to clean your desk, organize your materials, and ensure the environment is conducive to work. This will not only improve your productivity but also bring more lightness to your routine. Remember, a disorganized environment is not just an aesthetic issue. It directly affects your ability to be productive and focused. With his workspace organized and his mind clearer, Michael was ready to take the next step in his journey to overcome procrastination. He had learned the importance of starting with the simple, using lists, and keeping the environment in order. But there was still one last key missing. After organizing his workspace and seeing his productivity increase, Michael faced another challenge: the temptation to multitask. He thought that by doing multiple tasks at the same time, he was being more efficient. But in reality, it only made him more overwhelmed and less effective. That's when the productivity expert gave him a straightforward piece of advice: focus on one task at a time. Multitasking might seem like a quick solution, but it actually decreases the quality of work and increases stress. Michael began to notice that whenever he tried to handle multiple things at once, such as responding to emails while preparing a presentation, he ended up making more mistakes and feeling like he had not made any progress. He then decided to try a new approach. He would choose a specific task and focus solely on it until it was completed. At first, it was difficult to resist the temptation to check other things, but gradually he realized that by completing one task at a time, his work flowed more naturally and he felt more satisfied. For example, instead of trying to review a report while taking calls, Michael began to set aside blocks of time for each activity. If he was reviewing the report, that was his sole focus. And the result? He not only finished tasks faster, but he also noticed a significant improvement in the quality of each job performed. By eliminating the dispersion of focus, Michael was able to be more productive without the extreme fatigue he used to feel when trying to do everything at once. This trick is applicable in any situation, whether at work, in studies, or even in personal activities. If you have a large project to finish, break it into stages, as mentioned before, and concentrate on one part at a time. Forget the notifications on your phone or interruptions from emails. Michael adopted this approach and realized that by doing so, his mind was less overwhelmed, and procrastination was much easier to avoid. Motivation came naturally as he was able to check off completed tasks from his list, one by one. This focus on a single task also brought other benefits. Michael began to feel more in control of his time and less anxious about what he still needed to do. He understood that by dedicating his full attention to one task at a time, he could not only be more efficient but also rid himself of the constant feeling of being behind. Multitasking wasn't the solution, it was a disguised problem. Now, Michael was on the right track to overcome procrastination and improve his productivity. Thus, with all these strategies applied, Michael finally managed to feel in control of his routine. However, this journey of self-improvement brought more than just productivity. It revealed that, when it comes to achieving your goals, it's not enough just to work hard. You need to work smart and focused, but there is always more to learn. Wizard, now that you know these 4 tricks, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to continue letting procrastination dominate your days, or will you apply these simple strategies and finally take control of your routine? The difference between those who achieve their goals and those who remain stagnant lies in action. So, what will it be? Are you ready to start and truly increase your productivity? To help you even more in this process, I've left a tool in the pinned comment that will guide you in completely organizing your finances for just $4.99. With it, you will be able to visualize your spending, plan your savings, and save to invest smartly. Don't let this opportunity pass by. It's a small investment for a big leap towards your financial freedom. So, apply what you've learned, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications to continue receiving tips that will transform your productivity and your life.